What a nice group of people out there. Thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. I see a lot of friendly faces in the room, which is sometimes unusual. You know, go figure, right? So thank you for joining us. For the record, it is Tuesday, January 5th. It's a few minutes after 6. We'll start this meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilmember Milam.
Here.
Councilmember Byrd.
Here.
Councilmember Borton.
Here.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Here.
Mayor DeVeard.
Here.
And Councilmember Roundtree is absent.
Item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all rise and join us in the pledge to our flag. Item number 3 is our community invocation. Tonight will be led by Pastor Steve Moore with the 10 Mile Christian Church. If Pastor Moore will come forward, please join us in the invocation or take this as an opportunity for a moment of reflection. Thank you for joining us.
Honored to be here. God in heaven, we know we need you. The air we breathe, things we take for granted, and we pause, and I'm grateful to belong to a city and be a part of a city that understands that and will bow their heads before you at the start of this important meeting. God, thank you for blessing this community, and the rest of the world's recognizing what we already know. How wonderful it is to be here. I pray the decisions that are made this very night will just improve and expand our community. Thank you for these that serve us and give their time and their premium hours to thoughts and decisions that are for the betterment of this community. I pray especially for Ann and Ty as they assume new responsibilities and service in this community. Thank you for those that have served and are their predecessors and bless their lives for what they've given to Meridian. Thank you for our mayor, and we're grateful for the leadership that she's given us in these years past, and we pray the next 4 years that you will be at the helm of her life. We're grateful that she's surrendered to you, and we ask you to bless her and her family. God, I just ask for your direction for what's decided for our community. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Item number 4 is adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
we have no resolutions or any changes, so I move that we adopt the agenda as printed.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as printed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Did I hear all ayes? Okay. I will ask on item number 5 if Councilman Zaremba will do the privilege of this item.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as published and for the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and several seconds to approve the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, will you please call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Milam.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Just one thing before we get to the swearing-in ceremony, we need to conclude with our old business with the current council before the new council steps up. If you're wondering why we're not swearing in Anlo Roberts, she is not here this week, and so per our ordinance, until a new member is sworn in, the current member will continue to serve until that time. So we're fortunate to have Councilmember Zaremba through the end of this meeting.
Overtime.
Yeah, he's
Time and
not
a half.
going anywhere. We know where he lives. There were no items moved from the consent agenda. Item 7A is under old business, and I will turn this over to Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This item was a discussion you had on December 22nd with the developers of the Silver Oak Apartments on Franklin Road. What their request was in their building process, they received approval for 260 units to be constructed in a phased program back in 2014. We've met with them to discuss our fees. There was a fee methodology change that occurred in October of this year. They provided a lot of information and a lot of paperwork in regards to the process that they were going through to get these constructed based on the original approvals from 2014. Based upon that, we were comfortable to be able to recommend to the City Council that we apply the prior method of calculating their assessment fees for these multifamily units just for this phase, as long as those can be completed and submitted by March 1st of 2016. So we were comfortable making that recommendation. I have discussed that with the applicant as counsel prior to the meeting, and she was going to acknowledge whether that was acceptable to them as well.
And Mr. Neri, I know that in May when they pulled for the first phase, the second phase was approved through the CZC, and so that's when they were inserted part of their financing to the fees that were communicated at that time.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, that's correct. They had they had both CUP, CZC, and design review approval in in November of 2014. They used that information to then put together their financing package to get them built in two separate phases, and they began that second process of the 132 apartments. That's what they're asking for today, right on the heels of getting the building permits for the first phase. So based on all of that information, we felt it was reasonable to apply the prior methodology to this phase as they've requested, as long as it can get done in a fairly timely fashion, which they've indicated in a number of both the letter and in front of you, as well as in our meeting, that they could meet a time frame of March 1st.
Okay. Council, any questions? And the developers of Silver Oak agree? Okay. Okay, council, any further information needed on this?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd?
I would move that we pass the agreement that was made between the staffs regarding the apartments out there, and because their financing and stuff had been in plan at the old rate, and to allow that to happen on this phase.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Under item 8 is the swearing in of the next elected officials for the next 4 years. We'll do this one at a time, and I would ask at each one that you introduce your family, and at the end of it, when everyone's seated, we'll see if there's remarks, and I'm just preparing you. I have remarks. So item 8A is the swearing of Mayor Tammy DeVeert. I'd just like you to stand with me.
You want to introduce your family first?
Well, I'm going to introduce you to the people that I have standing up, and then momentarily, well, I'll just ask them all to come. So Bart and Tara, grandkids, spouses, come on up. Now you see why I was elected. I just got my family members out to vote. Jan, you want to come?
Okay. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Me too?
Yeah, just this one.
Trying to sneak in.
Are you ready? Here, we'll get you closer to the mic. Okay. I, Tammy DeVeard,
I, Tammy DeVeert,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Idaho,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Idaho,
and the ordinances and policies of the City of Meridian, Idaho,
and the policies and ordinances of the City of Meridian, Idaho,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of Mayor of Meridian, Idaho,
the duties of the office of Mayor of Meridian, Idaho,
to the best of my ability during the continuance of my term.
to the best of my ability during the continuance of my term.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You're wonderful, you know it. We're gonna sit down?
Just wait until we all go.
You have a strong constituency.
Okay, so wait. So this is Bart, my grandson Gabriel, my granddaughter Bella, my dad Dick Bartlett, who was a coach at Bora High School, and which is why I was born in Boise, but he's a Bengal, so all you Vandals and Broncos, eat your hearts out. My mother Sydney Bartlett. This one here in front is Braxton, and we have Jacob, and my daughter Tara and her husband, oh my God, Jared. I think there's just too many people to keep track of. But this is the first time I've really had my parents here, so makes it more emotional. They've been great supporters, and I really love them dearly. So thank you for being here. I was sitting in my office before I came down here, and I thought, why am I so nervous? And it's always neat having family here, and this is an incredible privilege. So, okay, item 8B is the swearing in of City Council member for seat 3, Ty Palmer.
I might preface this as well. My family, I was born, but there's only one flaw in my family. And that's, we get emotional when we talk about one of three things: our family, our country, or my God. And so all three is part of this, so it might take a minute, but we'll get through it.
All right. Do you want to introduce your family members?
Yeah, do you want me to do that now?
Go right ahead.
So this is my wife, Brenda. We've been married 3 years. And my twins, Reagan and Riley, and then our 7-month-old Libby. And then my parents, Joe and Leslie Palmer, are here as well.
Do you want them to come up?
Come up, Ty.
They really don't want to. They are there, so
Right, you can tell them to.
that's okay. We'll let them off of it. Yeah.
Okay. Right here. Okay, if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ty Palmer,
I, Ty Palmer,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Idaho,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Idaho,
and the ordinances and policies of the City of Meridian, Idaho.
and the ordinances and
Policies?
policies of the City of Meridian, Idaho,
Yes. And that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of City Council
the duties of the office of City Council
of Meridian, Idaho,
of Meridian, Idaho,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
during the continuance of my term,
during the continuance of my term,
so help me God.
so help me God.
All right, gentlemen.
Ty, now you get to come up and have a seat. Item 8C is the swearing in of City Council member for seat 5, Genesis Milam.
Yes, my husband and my son are here. This is my husband, Dean. See, I told you I was married. Oh, sorry. This is my son, Tristan, and he just came from judo, so. He's my expert. You ready? I'm gonna come stand by me. Stand in front of me.
Okay. If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Genesis Milam,
I, Genesis Milam,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the constitutions and the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Idaho,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Idaho,
and the ordinances and policies of the City of Meridian, Idaho,
and the ordinances and policies of the City of Meridian, Idaho,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties of the office of City Council of
The-
Meridian, Idaho,
the duties of the office of City Council of Meridian, Idaho,
to the best of my ability during the continuance of my term,
to the best of my ability during the continuance of my term,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I guess there needs to be a fun one in every crowd, right?
Yeah, somebody's got to be fun.
And at this point, I'll give the floor to our two council members. Ty, you have any comments that you'd like to make?
I guess you did warn us, didn't you? Is this working? Doesn't seem that they usually do as they sit in the audience.
Yeah.
No.
That's okay.
I just can't express enough how grateful I am to the citizens for trusting me enough not to run against me. I really do appreciate that because that gave me an opportunity that I wouldn't have had I actually ended up, having to run a campaign. Because for the last several months, I've been able to sit here in the audience and learn and be able to meet with the different department heads and have an opportunity to actually learn what it is I was going to be doing so that I felt prepared to actually be here today to get started. And I mean, I apologize to anybody who's heard me say this, but it really is the fact of the matter, not just a campaign spiel, but I grew up in Meridian. Technically, I was born in Boise because we didn't have a hospital yet. But I was born and raised in Meridian, and the Meridian that I experienced, I see that it still is today. The Meridian that is family-friendly, that is safe, that is the perfect place to raise a family. And now that I have a family, I felt that it was time that I stepped up and made sure that it remained that way for the next generation, for my kids, to be able to have the same experience that I did, and then for their kids, hopefully, as well. And so I, again, just thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve you.
Thank you. Councilman Paul. Genesis?
I don't really have anything to say. But I'm really glad that I'm able to be here and continue my term, because it's taken a long time just to learn the ropes, and I'm just getting started, people. Sorry. I'm grateful for the support that I have from my family, because without that support at home, I wouldn't be able to spend the time that I do during the meetings and other council activities that I'm involved in. So I'm just thankful thank you, honey. Thank you, Tristan, for supporting me and letting me come to all these late night things. And thank you for everybody for being here tonight, and for voting and for loving Meridian the way that we do. Appreciate it.
Sure nice seeing a lot of the faces in this room. It's a real privilege to think that I'm at the beginning or the cusp of my 4th term, serving such an amazing community like this. I see longtime supporters, and I see new friends. I would counter, I think, what Councilman Palmer just mentioned, that I am really blessed because I did have others that filed for office. I think everyone should have to earn your vote. And that work of knocking on doors, of being available, holding town hall meetings, and hearing what people have to say is so critically important in being able to sit up here and serve our community and represent the things that they really believe and the concerns that are on their mind. Knocking on the doors in our communities, I learned a lot of different things. One, our residents are so proud to live here in this community. They care, and what we've always said is we have a community that's ready to stand up and to be involved. So they don't just share their concerns, they share their ideas for solutions. And I think that if anyone knows me, and I don't see Craig Still here tonight, when I knock on your door and you tell me something that you're upset about, I will engage you to be part of the solution. And I think that's how this city works. We have incredibly talented citizens that if we tap into their passion for our community and their desire to make it better, they'll stand beside you and work hard to do so. I see the Brutons in the 2nd row, and they're one of those families that were this hidden, discovered gem in our community. And they invited me to an HOA meeting that they were going to sing at because their voices are just totally incredible. Because they wanted their neighbors to see who they saw. And I saw that behind every door, the person that stopped in their car when they saw my husband putting up signs. And so if you ever have any concern about the signs we put up, you can ask my husband, because he put up every single one of them. And with Craig Robinson, he took every single one of them down till 4:30 in the morning. But they stopped and they said, we want a sign. I had another friend that had someone knock on her door and said, where can I get one of those because of my sign in her yard? I found people that I didn't know, but we had the passion for our community in common. And wasn't it cool the day after election where we got the news, shh, don't tell anyone, that we were #1 in the nation as the best place to live. And it was evidenced, yes. And it was truly evidenced throughout that campaign that I wouldn't have seen otherwise if I had a free ride until Election Day. Because I can tell you, we knocked on a lot of doors, and if there was a hot spot out there, we found it. And then we addressed it, because ultimately people just want to be heard. So the #1 in the nation mirrored the salient points that I heard at your door and that I was sharing. We're a safe community. We are a community with opportunities and growing opportunities that we hear about every week in this chamber. Those companies or those developments that help define who we are, that want to be part of the vision of the city of Meridian. I get to serve with people that are sitting up here who truly care about our city. They have a vision and a passion to make sure that it continues to be a good place for our families and safe for our citizens and a place to do business. I serve with a senior management team that is second to none, that have developed strategies and methods and ways to make sure that we achieve your vision. We have employees that care. They really truly care about the customers and the citizens that they serve. And that's why we're a safe city. That's why we're a good place to live. That's why we have quality places to play and community events that we get goosebumps on when the lighted parade happens by our young ones. And they have visions of what this community is about. And you'll hear from the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council how youth are engaged and how this community is all about our kids. That's why I get up excited to serve the people and to serve this community. Because I serve with people that want to stand beside every single one of us up here. And I am very privileged and honored that you had confidence to allow me to continue to serve this city. And I hope that you realize that the service that all of us do up here and that all of our employees do are to work with you to continue to make this a premier place to live, work, and raise our families. I'm also privileged that we have our county partners here, Commissioner Dave Case and Ada County Sheriff Steve Bartlett. These are important partners in our community, and we don't always agree, but they'll come around. Right, Dave?
I think that's on the record.
But we thank you all for being here. I want to thank my husband, because I think every one of you that are married, you know the importance of the support of your spouse. And the support of my spouse has been stellar. He's my best friend, my best sounding board, and sometimes I'm throwing darts at that sounding board. But he gives me very wise counsel, and I couldn't do it without him. I want to thank my kids. They grew up seeing my service to the community, and they know how it fills my heart, and they've been a part of it, and they knock on doors every 4 years, and sometimes they happen into neighborhoods where we found that problem. And they still do it with great smile and gratitude. My grandkids also. How can you say no to Bella when she's in front of your door saying, vote for my grandma? New strategy. And I think that Ty had figured that one out when I saw him walking down the street with strollers with handles on both sides, and Brenda beside him, and the baby, and it was like, wow, that's a powerful campaign team. Meridian's about families, but it's also about the people that care, and I have a great team. Peggy Gardner, I think Peggy and Larry have been with me since my first campaign for city council. And boy, did we learn a lot of stuff. But she's still there, and I so appreciate you, Peggy Gardner. Okay, I could lament all night long, and I won't. But needless to say, thank you for being here. To those that went and knocked on doors with me and did a lot of kind of silly and foolish things, but I appreciate you. Thank you to those that got out and vote. Whether you voted for any of us sitting up here that were just sworn in, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to have a voice in the process. I see one of our youth council members, and he told me that this would be the year, his first vote. So, Tyler, congratulations. And with that, you don't have to last throughout the whole evening, but if you'd like to, my mom actually asked for permission to sit through the whole meeting, and she has it. So if you would like to get up at any time, feel free to. But thank you for being here and being part of history, the swearing in of our youngest city council member, and being here to support us into the next term. So thank you.
Hope you use Nerf darts. When you throw darts at Jan, they're Nerf darts. That's all I'm saying. Boy always has on a leather jacket.
You know, Brianna, if I had thought of it, I would have made them wait until after.
Oh, yeah. One more thing.
Shoot. And any business person that was here, just beware. City council or youth council will be calling you to help them out. Dang it.
Oh.
Give me knuckles.
I'll put this together for one. What are you looking for? Oh, hit down below, Tammy. Oh, his is different.
Ooh, he got a new.
Howdy,
broke it.
No, he doesn't want on that. He wants that. How many people do? Okay.
You guys got a new one, huh?
This, oh,
Source. But I didn't see a source back. Okay, item 9A under department reports, new business. We'll hear from the mayor's office that hosts our Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. And in front of us, we have Brianna Sidaway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the council, for the record, my name is Brianna Sidaway. I will be giving you an update of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council for the activities of November and December. And this is our third update of the MIAC year. As you can see at the top of the screen, that is the picture of our MIAC group photo. We always like to take a silly one as well, as you can see on the right. And it's become so close, and we all have bonded very well together. First, I would like to talk about the STAND grant. MIAC won the STAND grant once again this year, and we were able to send 2 members of MIAC to a workshop to learn how to learn the requirements for an anti-tobacco event. We are planning to partner with the village at Meridian, and we are hoping to hold a free movie for teens, and we will have booths and previews to show the dangers of tobacco use. And we will have more information about this at a future date. The Teen Activities Committee held their first official event at Dart Wars. This was a very exciting event, and it was a great way for members of this committee to meet each other, since how we all don't go to the same school, and it was a very exciting way to just be in a safe environment and meet new people. We co-hosted a float with Buckle Up for Bobby for the Winter Lights Parade, and we did this so that we could show the community how serious we were about seatbelt safety as we were trying to pass the seatbelt safety law. Our theme that we had was All We Want Is You, a popular Mariah Carey song. And we handed out these candy canes with messages of seatbelt safety on them, and we handed those out to the crowd, and it was a really exciting event, and I know that everyone who participated loved it, and it's a memory that we will never forget. We had our MIAC All Valley Christmas party at the Idaho Party Barn. We had 125 teens from Meridian, Nampa, Middleton, and Caldwell attend. We had dancing, a gift exchange, and most importantly, we held a toy drive for the Boys and Girls Club. Together, we donated 50 gifts to help these children have a substantial holiday. And that's also what I will be talking about next to this Christmas gift exchange. We partnered with the Meridian Police Department, the Fire Department, and the Meridian Anti-Drug Coalition and EMS workers. This was the 3rd annual Christmas party that they have held, and they had a dance party, games. There was a reindeer, as you saw in the picture before, and the kids were able to play with, meet the reindeer and play with them. And then they also had the gifts that we donated. They were labeled with ages so that the children could all have a gift that was fitting for them and one that they would truly enjoy. And I will now stand for questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
it was one of my favorite reports. As always, nice job.
Thank you.
Brandon, maybe share with us what's your favorite part about the youth council? What's like if you were to go encourage someone to come join it, what's the one thing that you always tell them about?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Kavner, I just love how friendly people are in Mayak, and it's getting emotional. It's such a safe and happy environment, and it's like every time that we have a meeting or we have an event, just seeing all the people there and everyone's happy and everyone is being invited and we're all caring for each other. That's just what I love most about Mayak, is that we have such a caring nature in all of us that we all share it with each other, and it's made us a family.
It's great. That's awesome. Great to hear.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again for sharing.
Yeah, thank
You
you.
know, and I would say this is one of the most cohesive Mayor's Youth Advisory Councils that we have had. And certainly you've seen that our executive council, they don't have to hang out together, but they come together as a council, and then we hear of when they come together outside of their council meetings, and they become a family. And it's neat to see that kind of relationship building among the representatives from the different schools that wouldn't have met otherwise. And I'll tell you, they're not just passionate, they are making things happen. Their leadership this year has been stellar. So kudos to all of our executive council members
Thank you.
and our members in general.
And
Any
advisors.
other-
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Zaremba.
I would just comment, we all know that it's common to think of youth as a lost group of people off doing their own thing. I am so thrilled with what you and all the Mayak people are doing. You really make us all optimistic about the future. You are participating in the community now and making a positive influence in the community now.
Thank you.
And that's just a wonderful thing to see.
Thank you very much.
And there is a standing invitation to city council members. Anytime you want, you can come out and hang out with us.
Of course.
A lot of fun.
They are.
A lot of fun.
And there is a legislative breakfast coming up in 2 weeks. And so certainly we'll get you information on that if you would like to come and listen to our government affairs students as they talk with our legislators.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Thank you.
Great job, Hannah.
Great job. Okay, item 9B is under our Public Works, and I will turn this over to Mike.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is a tough agenda to follow, so I will make this quick and brief. No slides. This is an informational update. We brought to you in October a realignment of the Public Works Department, and there was a few things that we were going to need some time to fully implement, and I wanted to share with you those adjustments and then the implementation of those. There were two positions that we were looking to pivot on because we had different needs in the department. One was the Environmental Programs Manager, and that was leveled at a K. And we pivoted on that and went to a Education and Outreach Specialist, which came back leveled at a J. So that's actually a personnel savings of about $6,000 a year in annual salary. The other position was the Surface Water Program Administrator, and we pivoted on that and went to an Environmental Programs Coordinator. That's a neutral. Those were both J positions, and we are looking to go out to market and advertise for those positions within the next 2 weeks. So we wanted to bring back those final implementation pieces that we brought to you in October so that you have some awareness on what we're going to be going out to market for.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Okay, item 10, under action items. 10A is Oak South subdivision number 3. I will turn this over to our staff.
Thank you, Madam
Josh.
Mayor, members of the council. This is coming before you because the applicant did not get back to staff in time for it to be put on the consent agenda, just as a preface. So this is a final plat. The site consists of 9.09 acres of land. It's currently zoned R8, and it's located on the south side of West McMillan Road between North McDermott Road and North Black Cat Road. A little history on the project. Annexation and a preliminary plat for the site were both approved back in 2013. And this is the third phase of the final plat. The proposed final plat depicts 40 single-family residential building lots and 5 common lots on, again, 9.09 acres of land in the R8 zoning district. The average lot size for the residential portion of the development is 7,422 square feet. The gross density of the development is 4.4 dwelling units per acre, with a net density of 5.87 dwelling units per acre. All of the lots proposed in the subdivision are for single-family detached homes and comply with the dimension standards of the R8 zoning district. The applicant, as I said, did get back to staff in agreements with all the terms of the staff report, and staff is recommending approval of the application. Stand for any questions you may have on the application.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Ms. Mylum?
No.
Oh, you go for it. Okay. I move that we approve H 2015-0038, final plat.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve item 10A. Any discussion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes. Item 10B is a public hearing continued from December 15th for Eagle Commons at Overland. I will open this public hearing with staff comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The next application before you is a request for a development agreement modification on the I-84 Center development agreement. This site consists of 21.25 acres of land, Zone CG, located northeast of the South Eagle Road, East Overland Road intersection, south of I-84. This property was annexed back in 1995 as part of the 74-acre development area for the I-84 Center, which consisted of 73.5 acres of land that was proposed as a commercial plan development to develop with a 700,000 square foot retail power center. The applicant for that project chose not to proceed with development, and the development agreement was never executed. However, the provisions of annexation still apply to the development of this site. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation for this property is mixed use regional. And this is an aerial view of the property. The Elks property is here to the north, and then this property is owned by Kistler. The applicant requests approval of a modification to the provisions of the development agreement to include a new conceptual development plan and specific provisions related to development of this site. This was the conceptual development plan that was approved back in 1995 with the annexation. As you can see, all the retail buildings are kind of around the perimeter of the development with internal parking. The applicant has submitted the proposed concept plan to change in the agreement. The previous provisions required the donation of a well site to the city, which the city engineer deems is no longer necessary, and the requirement for the property to be subdivided and a conditional use permit required for all development. Staff has verified that the subject 3 parcels are original parcels of record per the city code and are therefore eligible for building permits if the pending property boundary adjustment application is finalized. And a conditional use permit should only be required if the use is listed as a conditional use in the CG zoning district. The other provisions are now standard development requirements contained in the UDC that staff does not recommend are included in the new development agreement. The proposed concept plan before you depicts 3 phases of development. The first phase will include the construction of a 2-story, 86,000 square foot store for Norco and associated parking and drive aisles on Lot 2. That is this building right here. The ground floor will have a retail showroom for medical and industrial supplies with a warehouse and retail storage. The second floor will house a new billing office for the medical side of Norco. The second phase will include the construction of an 85,000 to 95,000 square foot single-story commercial retail store on Lot 1. That is the major A building right here. The third phase will consist of a single pad site on Lot 3 along the west boundary of the site. No specific users are identified at this time. The 5 Mile Creek runs east-west along the southern boundary of the site. You can see here this area right here. And across the proposed driveway via East Overland Road to the east boundary of the site. The driveway, you can see is proposed down here. This is the light at the intersection here at Overland. A 10-foot wide multi-use pathway is proposed along the north boundary of the creek in accord with the Pathways Master Plan within a public pedestrian easement. A portion of this project lies within the Meridian Floodplain Overlay District. A floodplain permit application is required to be approved by the city prior to any development occurring in the overlay district. A driveway is proposed for access via East Overland at a signalized intersection, East Overland Road and South Silverstone Way. The concept plan depicts a 30-foot wide commercial driveway around the perimeter of the site for temporary access to the Norco site, and 2 emergency accesses for the fire department are proposed at the west boundary of the site via South Rackham Way that will be gated until such time as Lot 3 develops, and that is right in these locations here. A cross-access easement is required to be provided to the property to the east, Zamzows, where the driveway stub is currently located, and that is generally here in this area, I believe. Based on ACHD's comments, right-of-way is required to be dedicated along the west boundary of the site to widen South Rackham Way to local street standards, and along the east boundary of the site to provide public street frontage to the Steer property, and that is right in here, which will allow for the development of a stub street in that location in the future if the property redevelops commercially as anticipated, and construct South Silverstone Way from Overland as a collector street through this site to the north property boundary for future extension. This will allow both the Elks and Zamzows properties access to the signalized intersection. And again, I'll back up to the aerial here. This is the Elks property to the north up here, I-84, and then the Zamzows building down here at the southeast corner. A 35-foot wide street buffer is required along East Overland Road and entryway corridor. A 20-foot wide street buffer will be required adjacent to the future collector road, and a 10-foot wide street buffer is required along South Rackham Way, a local street. A 6 to 8 foot tall fence or wall is required to be constructed along the east boundary of the site adjacent to residential uses with the first phase of development. These lots right here are all residential lots in Jewel subdivision. The applicant should work with the neighbors to determine an appropriate fencing height and material. The proposed development agreement only applies to the subject 21.25 acre property. When the remainder of the property to the north develops, the developer of that property will also be required to enter into a development agreement subject to the terms of the annexation, unless otherwise modified. The provisions of this agreement do not apply to that property, and that is the Elks property up here. Written testimony has been received from Jeff Huber, the applicant. He requests the following changes to the staff report. You guys should have also received a copy of that. Gonna run through them real quick. DA provision number 2, they would like to remove the requirement for a 20-foot wide street buffer along Collector Street, as one isn't proposed. Staff agrees with this only if council doesn't require a collector street. The applicant is asking for only the driveway to be provided. Condition number 3, only require 25-foot wide buffer along the back side of the residential lots, not within the floodway area. Staff agrees if council does not require a collector street again. Number 8, allowance of a property boundary adjustment or subdivision of the property prior to the second phase of development instead of just a subdivision, since there are 3 original parcels of record. This is a carryover provision from the existing development agreement provisions, and staff is in agreement with the applicant's request. Number 9, the applicant does not agree to providing a cross-access easement to the property to the east, Zamzows, where the driveway stub is located without them paying their share for the cost of the access borne by Kistler.
Staff does not agree with this request. Number 13, remove the restriction for a one-story building on Lot 1 and allow future construction to comply with UDC standards for the CG district. Staff does agree with this requested change. Number 16, remove the requirement for dedication of right-of-way for the construction of Silverstone Way from Overland to the north boundary with the first phase of development. The applicant is willing to work with adjacent property owners, ACHD, and the city to find an equitable solution for access if current access isn't acceptable. This is a recommendation of ACHD, and staff does not agree with this change. Number 17, the applicant requests removal of the requirement for additional right-of-way to be dedicated along the west boundary of the site to widen South Rackham Way. Again, this is a recommendation of ACHD, and staff does not agree with the proposed change. Number 18, modify to only require 6-foot tall fence rather than 6 to 8 foot along the back side of the residential lots outside of the floodway. Staff agrees with a 6-foot tall fence if a dense buffer that allows trees to touch at maturity per UDC 11-3B-9C is provided for the area outside the floodway. Number 19, modify to allow for additional building permits beyond 1 to be issued with approval of a property boundary adjustment. Staff is in agreement with this change. And number 22 and 23, the applicant does not want to be obligated to pay for upsizing the lines for the adjacent property owner's future projects. They believe that they should pay the additional cost. Staff's comments on that is if any oversizing is required, the applicant may potentially be eligible for a reimbursement under Meridian City Code. Staff is recommending approval of the modification to the development agreement per the provisions in the staff report and the changes I just mentioned. Staff will stand for any questions Mayor and Council may have.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Zaremba.
Dredging up memory of the last time something was brought on this project, the biggest issue was the concern, it's addressed here, a floodway permit application is required to be approved by the city prior to any development occurring in the overlay district. And then along with that, along the west boundary of the site, they're required to widen South Rackham Way. As I recall, those have always been required of whoever brought anything forward on this. One of the major issues was they weren't able to work out the floodplain permit and the widening of the road. There was some assessment made that widening that road would require a fairly expensive bridge, or the floodplain would be backed up and it would change the nature of the floodplain. Am I remembering any of that? I'm looking at Clint, but am I remembering any of that correctly? It seems to me there was an issue that previous applicants haven't been able to resolve.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Zaremba, I do recall something similar to what you said. I don't recall the details of that. I think it was a council meeting I was at where this was brought forward several years ago, though, that you asked some of the same questions that
It
you're
was many
brought
years
up
ago,
now.
and
Yeah.
my concern is whether or not the requirement to preserve the floodway and get the application is going to be difficult. I'm suggesting that some engineering be considered before the applicant moves ahead. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think it's probably a good question for the applicant. Maybe their representative can answer that.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, would the applicant like to make comment? Good evening. Thank you for joining us. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Jeff Huber. My address is 8385 West Emerald in Boise.
Thank you.
I represent the applicant. Staff's done a wonderful job of introducing this project to you, and we're proud to present it tonight. A lot has changed since 1995, when the original project was brought before you. Mr. Kistler purchased this property in 2004 and has been planning his project ever since then. He realized at some point that he would need additional access because Rackham Way would not be sufficient for this project. In 2014, he purchased from the Sundance Company an access for his project. Since then, we have met with the city, and in May of this year, or last year, and had a pre-application meeting and went over discussed this with staff, and we at that time, the access did come up, and that was an issue. We went out and reached out to the Elks to the north and have had ongoing discussions with them regarding the access to this property, as well as property to the east, Zamzows. But we have been unable to reach an agreement on the improvements costs for the Collector Street that that ACHD would like to see built and that staff is proposing. We feel that our project doesn't warrant a Collector Street, and but we're willing to preserve or reserve right of way for that street in the future if we can reach an agreement with the adjoining property owners on the cost. We came back to staff again in October and had another meeting. At that meeting, the development agreement was brought up from the previous project in 1995. So we have applied, this is where we are tonight, we applied for a development agreement modification for a development agreement that doesn't really exist, but was part of the annexation in the previous applicant. The timing of this project is critical to Mr. Kistler. As you can well imagine, the relocation of 200 to 300 employees just doesn't occur overnight. It takes months and years of planning, and then the timing becomes very critical as it all comes together and the project's built. So it's not just the building of the project, but it's the moving of the employees. And we've incurred a couple of delays along the way. Following the last pre-application meeting we had in October, we had a meeting with ACHD, and they at that meeting requested that we build a Collector Street. We told them we don't feel that's fair. Our development does not warrant a Collector Street, and if a Collector Street is going to be in that location, everyone should share in the cost. There are a number of costs associated with that access. The modification to the traffic signal, there are latecomer fees associated with that traffic signal. There are construction costs of the roadway itself and related improvements, and there is the cost of the acquisition of the access that has been incurred by Mr. Kistler. So that is one of the main reasons we're before you tonight requesting that condition be deleted. There is access, the Elks property has access via Rackham Way and via an easement, a recorded easement through the Jewel subdivision in this location. Those properties were purchased with that, knowing that that was their access at that time, and Mr. Kistler purchased his knowing that Rackham Way was his access but would not be sufficient in the future for his project. So that's why he went and spent quite a large sum of money for that access, and we feel it's only fair that the other property owners share in those costs if a Collector Street's going to be there. The timing is so very critical for this project. I think I'd like to have Mr. Kistler come up and kind of describe the project for you so you can see what's going to be coming into the city.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Jim Kistler, 1591 Sendero Lane in Boise, Idaho.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and distinguished members of the City Council. Rather than really describing the project, I think I'll just take a few minutes and give you a little history on the history of Norco, the company that my father and I built when we bought it since 1968. The business has grown considerably. He bought 2 branches. We were down in Boise and then Twin Falls, Idaho. Now we have 70 branches, and some of those are large medical facilities. Initially, this was an industrial supply company, but we sell oxygen, so we're in the medical business. So we're doing a consolidation of the medical billing process that's done out of these 7 regional states and bringing it back to Idaho. It's a little bit more efficient to do billing in our central location rather than Kalispell, Klamath Falls, Bellingham, and Elko. So in making that decision, our billing facilities don't fit in our existing facilities as we've consolidated. We're over on Amity Road by the airport, and that's a 3-story building, but there's a lot of labor involved. So the real urgency on this project has to do with that 2nd story that's 40,000 feet, and that'll mostly be billing people, much the same way that Blue Cross is on Eagle Road, and they do their regional billing too. So that's kind of the time frame. I was hoping that we would be moved in by the end of this year. Now we're kind of dealing with this whole access and the cost of the project. By just putting Norco out there in that cornfield, and you'll remember that basically I've done 2 other Norco buildings in Meridian, one on Fairview originally, and then now we're out on Eagle Road at Ustick. And we kind of built that one out in the field too. But it is expensive to bring the utilities. We're set farther back from the roadway on this particular, because that's where my land is. It's more in the center of this 90-acre parcel. So that additional cost of having to put that roadway in and the acquisition of the land puts about $2 million onto our project. My building will be about $10 million to do that anyhow, and I expected to have a co-tenant out there that was shown in that major building right next to mine. That hasn't come to fruition, and this access issue has been kind of part of the problem with that. I'd like to go forward with this project if we can work through these issues and bring these jobs from Boise to Meridian. But the cost of having to add 20% to the project, for me having to bear that road entirely, is a pretty big cost. I paid for my access, and we have had meetings with the neighbors, friendly meetings, because I know the people from the Elks and I know the Zamshaus family, to say, hey, we'll give you your access, but we would like you to share in the cost of this, to help to defray the cost of my project. So if we can get the approvals tonight that we're looking for, we want to do the project, we want to come out to Meridian, bring these jobs, and I need to do it in kind of a timely fashion. I'd take any of your questions if you like.
Council, any questions for Mr. Kistler? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for being here.
We would request your approval tonight. We're in agreement with the staff report, with the exception of 5 items, and I'd like to go through those with you. Condition number 8 condition number 9 is the condition to grant access to the property to the east, properties to the east. Zamzows, the Steer property, and we would request that that be deleted because of the issues that we've brought forward to you tonight. Condition number 16, again, is the requirement to provide access to the property to the north via a collector street, and we would request that that condition be deleted for the reasons that we've stated tonight. Condition number 17, there is 65 feet of right-of-way for Rackham Way there. We don't understand what the additional need would be for a local street improvements, so we would request that that be deleted. And condition number 22 and condition number 23 both refer to the bringing the sewer through and upsizing sewer and water lines, and we are perfectly willing to bring the sewer through, but if there's an upsizing for other projects and other property owners, we feel that they should share in that cost. All the other conditions we're in agreement with, and we would request your approval, and I stand for questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Mr. Kavanagh.
Mr. Huber, I may have missed it, but can you explain to me what your basis is for not thinking you guys need a collector street? I don't know if I heard that particular piece.
Well, Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavanagh, our project isn't large enough to require a collector street, and if we're going to build a collector street for the other parties to use, we feel that they should share in the cost. To put it in perspective for you, if I was just a barber and was going to build a barber shop there, would I have to build a collector street through to everybody if I was just going to have a barber shop with one chair in it? It's not much different than just Mr. Kistler's project. It's larger, but it doesn't warrant a collector street. All he needs is a drive aisle.
Madam Mayor, I had heard from Mr. Kistler 200 to 300 employees.
Yes.
With all due respect, that's a few more people than one person that would come for a chair for a barber shop.
Well, sure, but it's still a development.
Sure.
And the size of our development doesn't warrant a collector street. To require us to build a collector street would be a taking of our property without just compensation.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Zaremba.
Madam Mayor, the question I asked earlier, have you actually done any advanced engineering to, what I'm focusing on is the floodplain permit application. Have you done any advanced engineering to determine whether that'll go well or not?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Zaremba, we have our engineers working on this project as we speak. And the improvements to Rackham Way we're willing to do on the front of our pad parcel out there in Phase 3. And I'm sure that there's, you can engineer just about anything if you spend enough money on it. So I'm sure we can get over that hurdle.
All right, thank you.
So I guess my question is, excuse me, because of the center position you're in, I truly believe a collector road is appropriate. Is what you're saying, if you build it, you want latecomers where you will get some kind of reimbursement? Is that how I understand it, or you don't want to build it at all?
Madam Mayor, we don't want to build it at all is the answer. We would build it if everybody would participate in it, and we think that's only fair and equitable. To date, they have been, we've had our meetings with the Elks and Zamzows, and they have not been willing to reach an agreement with us on sharing the cost of that road. And as I stated earlier, we're willing to preserve or reserve right-of-way for that road. Once those properties develop in the future, then the road can be constructed to those collector standards with everybody's sharing in the costs. But we're willing to build our project and the drive aisle today, and we need to do that today to move forward.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely have a question for Justin, so.
Okay.
Any further questions from council?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Zaremba.
I guess I would ask staff this. This is not an unusual circumstance. We regularly have developments where there's going to be another development behind them, and several things, sewer, water, and roadways need to be adequate to serve the future, and yes, that may not be this applicant's responsibility, but this is not a unique situation. We have them all over the place, and I guess my question is, what do we do about who pays for it?
Yeah, that was going to be a question to Justin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilman Zaremba, that road issues would be a question for Justin. So far as services, there may be a latecomers agreement that they could enter into if upsizing is required. But other than that, our code does require services to be to and through, and we require public streets to be extended and cross-access easements to be granted when access to a local street isn't available. So, standard requirements.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further from council?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Gordon.
Jeff, with regards to the cross-access, is it the same argument that you make, that you don't want to pay for it exclusively, as opposed to it's not even necessary?
Well, our project does not warrant a collector street, but we're willing to pay our pro rata share of a collector street if the other parties are willing to chip in also and share in the cost.
With regards to condition number 9, that spoke to the cross-access to the east?
Yes.
Merely granting the cross-access itself was objectionable. Is it the belief that it's not required, you shouldn't be required to put in or provide cross-access, or that it's appropriate but you don't want to pay for it exclusively?
Correct. We if we grant access, then they wouldn't have to pay for it. They wouldn't have to pay for the improvements to the signal and the collector street that they would all benefit from.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
And in closing, I just wanted to reiterate that these properties do have access from a local street currently. Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to provide testimony on this item?
Jason White, White Laser Development Company, 8385 West Emerald Street. To answer your question, Councilman Zaremba, did I get that right? We have done, Quadrant Engineering has done the hydrology study on the 5 Mile Creek, and that's why the buildings are set to the north, so we will stay out of the floodway and floodplain. What wasn't studied was how the inlet at Rackham Way. So we don't really know the answer to that question if widening Rackham Way would do anything to that. But we did study the rest of the 5 Mile drain.
Okay, Justin, I guess we have a question about this collector and how Ada County Highway District typically addresses this kind of scenario.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for the record, Justin Lucas, representing the Ada County Highway District. Business address is 3775 Adams Street, Garden City, Idaho. Just to begin, the application before you tonight is a modification to a development agreement. So in these situations, ACHD doesn't have an application to comment on specifically because we are not parties to your development agreements with developers. That said, oftentimes you do have requirements within development agreements that affect the highway district, and there's a mutual understanding between our agencies. But I just want to make that clear because that's why you don't have an official staff report or anything like that from ACHD, because there was nothing that we were able to really respond to or that was submitted to us for official review. That being stated, the collector street, I think it's accurate to say this is not a unique situation, and we deal with this all the time, where a collector street is required of one landowner or property owner that provides access to another landowner or property owner. That happens all the time. It's something that ACHD consistently requires, and it's something that we require it because collector streets are built by development. They're built through development. ACHD has no program to build collector streets. Those are built by developers. And so we, in coordination with the city, try to come up with a logical way to extend those streets through the development process. So the comments you heard tonight were ACHD's, after looking at this, thinking this is the most logical way to extend that specific street. So I don't know if that helps to answer your question. When it comes to who pays for it, and oftentimes are these streets built through some kind of cooperative agreement between landowners? I'm sure it occurs. Rarely does it occur with an official agreement with the highway district. Those are typically deals that are struck between the property owners. But the streets get built, and ACHD is not necessarily party to the who's financing the roadway. So I don't know if that answers your questions completely, but that's some information. I'll pause for any other questions you might have.
Council, any questions? Mr. Kavner.
Madam Mayor, Justin, thanks. And I just need some further clarification. The applicant is saying that they don't feel that the amount of vehicles that are going to be coming to their development warrants a collector. Maybe you could explain to me a little bit more the basis from ACHD as to why you think a collector is warranted.
So I'll explain. Let me start with this. To my knowledge, there's been no traffic impact study performed for this development, so I have no data or document to review that would give me an answer on the number of trips going in and out and things like that. So at this point in the process, ACHD has reviewed no such document. That being stated, oftentimes streets such as this, whether it be a collector or just an extension of a local commercial street, are oftentimes built without entirely being warranted by one single development because they're built to serve the entire area. It's a public street. And so oftentimes it's not uncommon for a developer to be required to build a street that his sole development or her sole development may warrant. The issue is more of an issue of connectivity rather than warrants of any specific development.
So basically what I hear is until you get an application for what it is, you don't know if it needs to be a local street or a collector, and that then the applicant gets hit with an unexpected, let's say they're now working into their finance plan a local street, and ACHD wants to get their application say, well, no, it needs to be a collector. Based on what? I mean, I would imagine that you would know what that street needs to be because of the intensity of the land use out there. And isn't it better to know what the expectation is going into this? I mean, staff could pull out any reference to the road and say, whatever ACHD wants you to do.
Sure.
But I think it needs to be above board so the people that are looking to develop know what is expected. And if it needs to be a joint venture between several different property owners, they also know what it all entails.
Madam Mayor, I can try to respond to that. The issue of development intensity within any city can vary widely based on a zoning designation. If a piece of ground has a zoning designation of CG within the city of Meridian, that could be so many different things. And so really the highway district has no ability to predict what a piece of vacant ground with any broad zoning designation will require. And so that is a difficult situation. As I stated, it's more of an issue of connectivity. Now, I'd have to look at our master street map, but I mean, we've been talking a lot about a collector street tonight. I don't know if a collector street is actually identified for this area on our master street map. I do not believe it is. So whether it's a collector or a local commercial street, let's just call it a public street. A public street connection between the signal at Overland and Silverstone north along this property line, connecting and terminated into the Elks property. That's been anticipated for a long time. There's a signal there at Overland and Silverstone Way, and the idea of connecting that to and through this broad vacant area, I don't think has been has been hidden in any way. There's always been an anticipation that there be a public street connected to the north at the signal into this area. The width of that street, the development requirements associated with that street, you're right, they could vary depending on the intensity, but to be honest, the difference between a local and a collector street in this situation is very little. It's 36 feet of pavement. The sidewalk width, you have some landscaping requirements associated with it, but public street connectivity in this area has been anticipated for a very long time.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Gordon.
did you say that the cost difference between building this as a local street versus a collector is small?
So I can't speak to the specific cost of this project. Let's say generally, yeah, a collector street and a local street built by a developer, as I say, the width and the improvements are not extremely different in a commercial setting. A residential collector street versus a residential local street, there could be some there could be differences there, sidewalk width, another thing. But this type of street, which serves primarily commercial, there's not much of a difference there from a width standpoint. And in a situation like this on a shared property boundary, ACHD does not require the entire street be constructed by the one developer. The one owner, they're required to build basically half a street plus 12 feet of pavement to accommodate two-way traffic. So they're not necessarily required to build all of the curb, gutter, and sidewalk improvements that would then be borne by the other property owner when there's a shared property line. But all of those details, as I say, have not been analyzed for this specific development because it's a development agreement modification, and there's really no detailed plan that ACHD has been able to review at this time. So I don't know if that helps or hurts the situation, but that's I can certainly stand for any other questions you might have.
Madam Mayor, may I comment on the issue of the development agreement modification? That is correct. It's only a development agreement modification. ACHD typically comments on subdivision applications. A provision of this original development agreement, as the terms of the annexation did require this property to be subdivided prior to issuance of any building permits. That was probably the reason, so that ACHD could do a traffic impact study and take a look at the street requirements for this property. With this DA mod tonight, the applicant is asking for that to be removed and for subdivision of the property to not be required and for them just to be issued building permits. So that is something that the council should consider very seriously with this application.
Mr. Zaremba.
Madam Mayor, it comes as no surprise I have a sideways question on this. And it's about the viability of Rackham Way. I don't remember whether it was a previous application on this property or a discussion about the property just to the south between this and Overland, but the current use of Rackham Way is ACHD park and ride lot and access to a farm, not commercial property or anything with heavy use. And the issue was the proximity of the intersection of Rackham Way, how close it is to Eagle Road. It doesn't meet, as I recall, ACHD's setback requirements. And I know at a time the fire department had a great issue with being able to access Rackham Road from Overland, making a left turn off of Overland in it. And I know there was some special striping identifying islands and don't cross this line and block this intersection. I'm not sure how that's working. We may want to hear from our police or fire departments. But my question to you is, and this puts you on the spot, do you have anything in mind that this access to Rackham Road, Rackham Way, may go away? I think there was discussion about moving that intersection, and what's the current thinking about that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilman Zaremba, members of the council, Rackham Way, you're correct, is a substandard street that's a historic street that's been there a very long time that, as this area develops, will not adequately serve the needs of higher intensity. Just to quote in the memo that was sent over to Sonia December 21, 2015, ACHD is considering and would consider a vacation of Rackham Way, which would be removing it as public right-of-way, as long as some kind of other access is available. If Silverstone Way is connected as a public street with a signalized intersection and can provide access to this entire area, Rackham Way becomes somewhat not needed in many ways and can then be used for other purposes. And so that's just what is referenced in this memo, is that Rackham Way would need to be vacated or improved adjacent to the site if there's a desire to leave it as a public street. So I think ACHD would certainly consider vacation of Rackham Way, so it would no longer serve this area if there was an alternate, more viable access. Does that help to answer your question, sir?
It does, thank you. I don't know if, while you're standing there, whether police and fire want to chime in on it or not, but.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Zaremba, from our standpoint, currently, when we do have calls in that area to access, it is difficult because there is so much congestion. And I would agree with Justin that should that area intensify with traffic, it's just going to exacerbate the issues that we currently experience there. People rarely observe the lines and often block that traffic to position themselves for the moves that they want to make onto Eagle. So it does create quite a bit of congestion and safety concerns for us when responding into that area currently.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Councilman Zaremba, from a police perspective, I mean, 1 month out of the year, that's a zoo. The other 11 months, we don't generally get a call out there. Police cars, of course, we can get to places that the big fire trucks can't get to, but we were always hoping, as I were planning over the past decade, that eventually when that road went through, Rackham Way would go away, and we wouldn't have that issue with having that road so close.
Madam Mayor, so I guess what I'm leaning towards, we have a requirement for the applicant to make improvements on Rackham Way. I would rather have them spend that money on the public road that accesses the signal. And I'm wondering if that's, is that a possible trade? I don't know whether that's an ACHD question or a development question.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, certainly if ACHD were able to review a subdivision on this site, that is where ACHD is able to do a more thorough analysis of the opportunities and options available for a development of this scale and scope. And so, absent of that, ACHD, due to our special purpose nature, doesn't have a lot of authority when it comes to some of these types of situations. And so, I can't say what would happen during that process, but certainly it's happened in the past where through the subdivision process, there's a vacation and an exchange, that all those things are possible and have happened many, many times in similar situations.
Thank you. Just a comment, I think my takeaway from this part of the discussion is that we need preserve the requirement that they do a subdivision. That's totally sideways from what we're talking about, but that's the conclusion I would draw.
Not too sure.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further from council? Any other public testimony before I ask the applicant to provide closing remarks? Good evening, Larry.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Larry Leisure, White Leisure Development Company, 8365 Emerald. Appreciate a chance to make a few closing comments as it relates to this particular project, because this is unusual. We've done over 100 shopping centers. We have some idea how they work and what needs to happen and when they're collector streets and so forth, or private streets. Many of our developments have private drives, which is what initially we had talked about here in this particular project. Because we're not talking 90 acres here. There are a few of us that were around in 1995. I'm not going to look at any of you that were there with me in 1995, but I can tell you this particular site and what's happened since that time in Meridian is obviously pretty dramatic. But I will also share with you that in 1995, you saw a plan that staff presented tonight. That was one of 50 plans that were laid out on this site. I'm talking the 90 acres. This is 20 acres of that 90 acres. This parcel can in fact be developed with a private drive if they have access off of the main element. At no time was there a final commitment as to where the location would be of what we're now calling a collector street. If the site plan that's before you right now, that was the one that ultimately you approved, which never happened. The developer walked away and nothing was developed. The truth is, a majority of the plans that were drawn on this site, because at the time Sundance was developing their project, they didn't know exactly where that location was going to be off of Overland, number one. At the same time, there was much discussion about an access point off of Eagle Road and the need for that to happen and why that could. In those years, perhaps that could have been done, and I can tell you for sure that if we'd been involved, we'd certainly been trying to make that happen for access for a 90-acre location. And I think that that was very important. The other thing is the major access point, yes, came off at this location, meaning off of Overland, but then this is 5 Mile. Well, that's really where the roadway went on majority of the applications and the site plans that were drawn, and the buildings were back against the real estate, not up on the freeway. So in other words, this keeps acting up here. Sorry about that. Let me try your.
Larry, select a color at the top if you would. Push one of those buttons up there, and then you can draw with it.
Oh, great. Thank you. So in the very beginning, when you're talking the 90 acres, the access was up here, wrapped around here, tied into what was Rackham Way, and then the buildings were all here. And you'll find back in the staff archives that that's really the way it was developed. So when we started master planning the 20-acre site with Norco and their property and what we could do, we looked at this site from the standpoint of how it could be integrated long-term, not knowing what the Elks or the future buyers of the Elks property would do. So we actually moved our buildings over to the west in the other site plan. I mean, in other words, our initial buildings were over off the side here, and so they're green. I'll try green. No, it's not working.
Oh, why it's not then.
But anyway, what I'm saying is that at no point this collector that we're talking about tonight was ever dedicated to go in this location where we're talking about this evening. We felt it made more sense for the future. We were proposing a private drive, which we have been all along when we met with ACHD. For the time being, an access drive, like any other private drive, would be built to ACHD standards and your standards to take care of this first phase of the development. We don't need 37 feet, and believe me, there is a difference in a full collector street and a residential street. Number one, I see the light here. But the bridges, the costs to build a bridge over this area that you're well aware of the wetland area that we have been able to solve. So timing is our question. We're sitting here with just a small portion of the 90-acre site. We can develop this site with private drive, still serving access to the Sundance, which is in our agreement, which is the piece to the west. And we can move forward, reserving additional real estate, reserving that 100-foot strip for the future when and if something ever develops in the back, or we come back for more intense development in the future. And that's what we're really proposing. It's an area of fairness here as far as the improvements to the infrastructure and the construction, and more importantly, the acquisition. This all had to be acquired. This was not a public access ever at any point. This had to be purchased from Sundance, all of this, and was very substantial in cost. So we're asking you to approve it. We'll get ACHD approval on the private drive that we have proposed here, or as located. We will reserve all that 100 feet so that something in the future could happen. The folks to the east that there was some discussion, it's a residential parcel. It's zoned for residential. It's the backsides of their homes, of their properties, that we're now being asked to give access to. I don't know whether that's for their trailers. I don't know what that accomplishes pushing all of that back down onto our property. But that's why we've also suggested we don't think today until that happens. There's no question the Elks property will be developed at some point. We all know it's for sale. There have been numbers of people looking at it. When that happened, we're anxious to sit down with those folks. The rights of way are there. We just don't have to go in and build that today for a 40,000 square foot building, a 2-story building that today Norco is proposing to bring into Eagle. The subdivision, we understand also the need for subdivisions. One big question though, we have 3 legal lots today that we can build on in the city of Meridian. We're requesting that one building permit to get Norco moving and going forward. A subdivision is 6 to 8 to 9 to 12 months. You might as well wipe it out for them doing anything this year with that subdivision. And legally, we have a lot. We have a lot that goes back and is legal, and we're requesting that be approved so that we can move forward on this one building. And that's the timing. We're not, the other is
Hey,
not
Larry,
an
you
issue.
need to wrap it up.
Thank you for your consideration, and we understand it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I do have a question, if I may.
Mr. Zaremba?
And I'm
Mr.
basically...
Leisure, I think he has a question for you.
Yeah. The suggestion has been made that in the past, there have been arrangements where a public road is required, that one applicant builds half plus 12. In other words, you're not required to build everything and all the accoutrements that would be on the east side of it. Frankly, I don't buy that anybody would look at this and not expect that roadway to go through there. But my question to you is, if there were some way not to make the improvements on Rackham, could you do the half plus 12 where the signal is?
That definitely would be an option to consider with the applicant. And I hear where you're going with that as a possibility of a phase 1 or step 1 as a possibility.
Well, the people on the east side would be required to complete the rest of the street. So.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and to the north.
Or to the north,
Yeah.
Either one.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that thought out there. That
Sure.
is something you'd be willing to consider?
Well, I'd have to talk with our landowner potentially there, and the cost.
You
It'd
can't
have to
from
be on the
there,
microphone.
but you can come up here.
I don't like to make this complicated or drag it out. Do I repeat my name and address?
You can just state your name. You
Jim
don't
Kistler.
Thank you.
I bought that little panhandle of land from the Sundance people, and I paid $500,000 for it, $10 a square foot, okay? So there was no roadway. When I bought that land as farm property, my access would have been Rackham. So I made an arrangements with the Andersons over there at Sundance, and I said, if I'm gonna do anything more than the house that's on here, I'm gonna have to have a wider access. And I bought it wide enough so that 100-foot road, isn't that what we plan to put in there?
Right.
100-foot road, and it could be a big wide access. Now, I'd like to have it too. I wish somebody else would have put it in coming across my property, but I can't just expect it. So the Elks have 2 separate locations where they do have access. It's somewhat inadequate, just like my access was inadequate for me to get a lot of traffic in and out. So I bought that access to come up to the lit intersection with all the baggage that came with it. I've got to put the lights in and all the other improvements. So when I go to my neighbors, and we have had dialogues, I've got a friendly relationship with the Elks people, okay? But I'm expecting them to do the same thing. It's not just a matter of an additional 14 feet of asphalt under there. I'd be happy to do that if we were just talking asphalt. But there's a value to that land, which I had to pay, and there's an additional 2 acres coming across my property of the 20 that is going to be that 100-foot wide access. So why do I have to put in what would be a 4-lane road for the luxury of my neighbors when I don't need it for this development. So it's not just putting in half the roadway, it's sharing the costs and sharing the costs of those larger utilities if they are going to put in something very large back there. But somebody that comes and buys the property from the Elks is going to have some consideration for, we need access, we need to pay Mr. Kistler for it, myself, and reimburse my company, or else we're going to have to widen Rackham, relocate Rackham so that it's not so close to that intersection, which would be bothering the police and ambulances and fire department. And they have to make a sunken cost in their land to be able to develop it in the future, much the same way that I did. So I go to my neighbors, Jim Zamzow and the people at the Elks, and tell them, do you guys want to ante up for this thing? And we've given them written proposals, and they sit back and say no because we suspect that the city might require it of you. It is kind of a taking. It's not necessary for my project. They can buy it the same way I did. That concludes my comments.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
Larry, I think, and you would agree with me, that the Silverstone is the only way to get into all that property back there. The other road is so close. It's hazard for our emergency vehicles to go out there. In fact, some of our trucks have to go down and make a U-turn to get back and get on it. It just, and we as a council have got to look out for the future of the development out here. Well, Mr. Kistler's developments are great, and we appreciate him bringing it to Meridian. We appreciate everything they've done for Meridian, been in Meridian. We have got to be practical about, it's across from a collector. It's got the lights there. It's got to be the deal. And he can take it to the property line. We don't have a traffic study. He's going to have a lot of employees out there. How many car trips are going to be coming? How many of your other stores? You have trucks coming in and out. Are you going to have your delivery thing out there? And stuff. So you're going to have big trucks coming in and out. I feel for this development at this time that should be a collector. And everybody that is first in line. You know, it's just like redoing an intersection. The first two developers usually wind up paying all the deals. The other two on the corners get away scot-free, right, Larry?
That's right.
Okay? So this is, I know it's an added burden, but I think as a city, and looking out for the city, the safety, my biggest thing is safety for our emergency workers and everybody else, public period. I think that's got to be a collector because it's a crosswind collector, and it also has the lights there now. So, well, I just, and it'd be nice if the Elks and Zamzows would go in with you. You can certainly approach it on that. It's done all the time by developers, agreements and stuff, and that's my 2 cents worth right now. I just think that's got to be the collector road, and that other one goes away.
Anything further from council?
It's not necessary for my development.
Pardon?
The applicant, does Jeff get any other opportunity to speak?
I think Larry wrapped it up for the applicant. Unless you have a question.
Madam Mayor?
Mr.
I have a
Gordon.
question for staff. Speaking of Rackham Way, that access isn't going to go away. It's connected to the Overland Village. You referenced that in the staff report from '08?
That is correct.
Speaking of vacating Rackham Way, might be from this project site to the north perhaps, but not south.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Borton, when Overland Village came in, I'm not sure if you're aware of this already, but it did include a request to vacate a portion of Rackham Way. Council did approve that request, but they never followed through with ACHD and obtained approval to vacate it.
Okay.
So it just is still in its current configuration. It had approved, been approved to be relocated, I believe, right in here, where my pointer is on the screen here.
Okay. Good. Vacated and relocated, not eliminated
Yes,
altogether.
vacated and relocated.
This is really odd. We usually don't have a discussion on what ACHD may or may not require. And not being the road department, this makes it very awkward. We do have to look at the future and whether the demand of this particular development would warrant a private road versus a public road. It has to be a public road because it's what connects to the northern piece, and it's what connects that entire undeveloped area to a traffic light, which, as Mr. Byrd pointed out, we have ultimate responsibility for the safety of our citizens and the developments that we approve. Who pays for it, I think, is really an Ada County Highway District thing. And can you require latecomers that if the northern piece wants to connect to a traffic light, they have to pay to get there? I don't know. We typically don't discuss this, which is what makes this odd. What we can say is that can't be a private road. It connects to a lighted intersection, and it would not be, we would not be doing our job for all property owners and for our public to say it's okay to just make that a private. I do think this is an ACHD issue, and it sounds like until you put an application in front of them, they're not going to weigh in. This is an oddity. I don't think we've ever had this discussion before. So we apologize. We are clunky in this conversation because this is not our forte.
Our wheelhouse.
It is not in our wheelhouse, but it's important all the same.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Milan.
So, I mean, in the way I see it, see if I'm correct here, we could either send it for subdivision and then ACHD, and with the requirement that we just go with whatever ACHD recommends, right? Or remove that, you know, or require it to be a collector street. I mean, those are the, I don't think we really have any other options in order to keep it. And if they think maybe if the applicant would rather, it sounds like they don't want to wait because it takes a long time, then ACHD could do their job and give the proper recommendation. But if they don't want to wait, I don't think that it's really an option to get rid of it.
Madam Mayor.
There's Zaremba.
Just for clarification, if I may, what we're asking is to modify an existing development agreement. The existing development agreement requires the subdivision, is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Zaremba, the development agreement itself does not currently exist. However, the provisions of the annexation that were to go in the development agreement do exist.
Okay.
And yes, they did require the property to be subdivided prior to issuance of any building permits. So to alleviate this issue, this is, you know, don't approve that.
Don't approve the modification.
Staff supported that with the conditions in the staff report because the applicant was in a hurry and trying to get going and trying to get their building built. So we were trying to work with them, and that's why staff solicited comments from ACHD. It is abnormal, but that's the reason why.
Follow up, if I may. Refresh my memory also. We've had the discussion about people not signing development agreements over a great length of time. Have we established currently on new applications that there's a 6-month deadline or something? This may be a question for Mr. Neri. I know we've discussed it over and over and gone back and forth on it, and at one point we made it 2 years, and my recollection is we've been talking about saying you either sign the development agreement within 6 months or we don't annex until we see it. Somebody refresh my memory on that, if you would.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, that is a current practice, and it is, I think that's in the ordinance update, if I recall. In the past, we basically just didn't annex the property, but in 1995, I have no idea, Councilman Roundtree's not here, he's the only one right now. I have no idea, but I know we have had we've had other types of annexations where the property was annexed and there was either no development agreement signed, or it was planned, as in this case, or the development agreement just kind of hung in the balance and they didn't connect those two together. So this was probably that, I would guess, but I don't know.
But we have fixed that for the future?
Correct.
Good,
Yes.
good, thank you.
Councilman Zaremba, on this particular project, they allowed the annexation to take place, but the development agreement was required, I believe it was prior to subdivision of the property, is what the agreement said, so it was rather abnormal.
Okay. That helps.
Mr. Byrd.
Sonia, I know Mr. Kistler is wanting to get this building started, and I don't like to hold people up. How important is the subdivision right now in this modified DA? And can we accomplishment after we would give him a building permit? Do we still have any bite?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Byrd, yes, you could approve it without a subdivision, per the staff report. The reason for the subdivision would be to get a traffic impact study and get ACHD's requirements. The bite would be certificate of occupancy.
Follow up, Madam Mayor. If we were to approve it as Silverstone being a collector's up to the property, then that takes care of the one step you were, the staff, because that's what the staff agrees with.
Mr. Byrd, could you speak to your mic, please?
I'm sorry. Isn't that what the staff agrees with, is to get that into a
To the northern property boundary.
to the northern
yeah,
property
to the
at
Elks
the collector
property.
road at Silverstone, where the lights are?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, council,
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
I see what staff's trying to do. It's, one or the other. I'm following you with regards to the subdivision application, or absent that, preserving what we anticipate to be the roadway improvements that might come from that process. The problem being the process takes too long for the applicant's needs. I think Councilman Zaremba touched on a concept that might be worth exploring in the short term that tries to capture what Mr. Kistler's saying, which is a fair consideration in this unique circumstance, trying to fairly allocate the cost of this collector roadway. If I heard you right, Councilman Zaremba was making reference to, rather than having this applicant construct the entire collector, it would be a requirement to construct much less and share that cost with the property to the north, for example. The burden on this applicant would be to construct the 1/2 plus 12, was one example. And perhaps some additional savings might be an amendment to the requirements on Rackham Way and improvements to that, at least adjacent to this parcel. I can't do the math or feel comfortable that that's proper, nor probably can the applicant. But I imagine, I would think within a short time frame, maybe even a week, that can be assessed to see whether that makes sense to explore. Because if you can preserve some tweak like that, you can go forward feeling comfortable removing the subdivision requirement and approve the initial development agreement and have those specifics within it. What I don't know is if that conversation, we don't want to reopen the door to latecomers agreements. I know those went away 10 years ago, but if this situation invites that type of reassessment to see if there's some horse trading, for lack of a better word, that still allows the applicant to stay on a fast track, it does share some of the cost. Is that feasible?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Barton, what I think you're saying is allow the applicant to work further with ACHD to determine if that would be an acceptable option. Is that what you're proposing?
I think ACHD and our staff certainly discussed this half plus 12 and eliminating improvements necessary on Rackham. There's true dollars to that. And what I don't think the discussion is, and I agree with the mayor and I think everyone else up here, that the private road is truly what's the long-term solution here. But I think what we're trying to do is create an equitable solution for the public street that's going to be there.
Staff has met with ACHD, with the applicants. We can meet with them again if that's the route you'd like to go. The next meeting is a workshop. It is not a public meeting, so we'd have to continue it out for 2 weeks if that's the direction you decide to go.
We can still put this on.
We can still put it on if we needed to.
Madam Mayor, the only reason I throw that out there is just to see if the concept is worth exploring. Maybe nobody thinks it is, but I thought Councilman Zaremba's idea had some merit. Mr. Leisure was curious. I just don't want to lose the opportunity to have those discussions.
It may be a question for Justin from ACHD.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Justin Lucas, Ada County Highway District. And once again, this is a development agreement modification application, and I know we've gone over how that's a little awkward to be discussing all of these items within this type of application. ACHD can accept right-of-way outside of the platting process, and we have done that many times. So a subdivision plat is not required for ACHD to accept right-of-way and to get a road built. Now, typically, that's how we get it because that's the only way we can require it and get it. And so, but if there's a desire by the city to somehow move this forward without the platting process, but still get what I would call a public road connection. I wouldn't even go to the point of collector. I would just call it a public road connection from Overland to the north property line. There may be ways to accomplish that outside of the platting process that could be more expeditious for the applicant. So that is possible. I can't tonight explain all of those options, but I certainly know that's happened in the past, and we have oftentimes through other types of applications gotten roads built. So that is a possibility.
So I guess, Justin, the question is, can you work with staff and the applicant and have some indication by next week?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I can commit to do everything I can to facilitate a meeting between our development staff, City of Meridian development staff, and the applicant. I can't guarantee it'll happen. I certainly know that ACHD can make time available to attend a meeting to discuss options on this property. I can't guarantee resolution because the resolution will come from various parties, not just ACHD.
Mr. Zaremba.
Just as part of this, and again, I'll put you on the spot, we have a couple of these, and I think of Pine Street east of Black Cat is a half plus 12, and maybe Venable south of Eustic. I don't remember where all of them are, but it's not uncommon. I think we've done several of them, and I guess my question to you is, how does that work out for ACHD? Eventually, an adjacent property owner has to complete that. How do you track that?
Once again, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Zaremba, through the development process, what would happen is if a half plus 12 is constructed, when an adjacent property owner on the other side, the unimproved side, comes in and wants to develop their property, ACHD then requires them to complete the necessary improvements on their side of the roadway. And that's very typical through the development process. There's probably, you mentioned 3 or 4, there may be 10, 20, or 30. There might be 100 of these in the county, all throughout the county. So it's not the half plus 12 requirement, which is stated in the memo that the extension of Silverstone Way as a public street to the north property line. This would include right-of-way dedication less than what is shown on the submitted site plan for future area, and partial construction, which is referencing the half plus 12 requirement. District policies support the extension of stub streets to and through developing properties. So that's really what this all comes down to, is that the extension of what we would consider a stub at Overland and Silverstone to and through this property, connecting to the adjacent property.
Thank you. I'm glad you come to our meeting.
Well, I'm glad I can be here. Unfortunately, I don't work directly with the applicants on these issues, and they probably are thinking to themselves, "Who's this guy?" But I represent ACHD as the liaison, and I try to bring the facts that I best I can. And you have that memo, I hope, in your packet from Christy Little, who is the planning review supervisor, who outlines the basic requirements of what ACHD would expect in this situation.
Anything further for Justin?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
Question for Mr. Neri. On a roadway, we don't have the power to make latecomers fees on a road. We do on sewers and stuff like that we put in, but we don't, and I don't know. I should ask Justin, but I don't know if they do or not. But it seems like I don't want to hold the building of this up or anything like that, but I do want some more clarification. And I would like to see, if the rest of the council, I would move that we continue MDA H 2015-0024 to January 12th, 2016, and for resolution, and see if the applicant, ACHD, which Justin said they would try, and our staff can work this out and make it clear so that we can get this project going to the satisfaction of everybody, including our citizens.
So I have a motion to continue, and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, this is a motion that doesn't have discussion.
I just had a question for the maker of the motion. For the maker of the motion, is there any direction as to what they're meeting on? Is it on any particular item or all items that are listed in the staff report?
All the controversial items, particularly the roadway. Silverstone.
So everything that
And
or that staff says they don't agree with.
that they don't agree with. Let's get it
Okay.
looked at.
So,
Second agrees.
okay. Those in favor of continuing this till next week, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I thought I heard all ayes, but wasn't sure. Okay. So we will have our staffs get together and hopefully we can come back and have a shorter discussion with some clarity on direction. So,
Give me calendars. Somebody can probably go.
and I will say, whoever put this on a short agenda,
All right, let's move on.
I'm glad that I moved my parents out so my dad could eat. Okay, item 10C is a public hearing for Settlers Square subdivision H 2015-0014. I will open this public hearing with staff comments.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is, again, Settlers Square. It's a preliminary plat. The site consists of 9.001 acres. It's currently zoned CC and is located on the northwest corner of Ustick and Venable Avenue. The subject site is surrounded by residential subdivisions located on the north and south sides of the proposed development, which are both zoned R8. A commercial development is located east of the subject site with a gas/convenience store and a mix of office uses, which is zoned CN. A little history: in 2008, the property was granted annexation, approved by the City Council with the CC zoning district for the Settlers Square subdivision. A development agreement was approved with the annexation. A preliminary plat was also approved concurrently that consisted of 12 commercial lots and 2 common lots on the same acreage. The preliminary plat then expired in 2010, but the development agreement for the property does not expire and is still in effect. In the development agreement that was signed in 2008, the applicant was granted direct access to Ustick Road. Due to policy changes at the Ada County Highway District, the applicant is no longer allowed to have direct access to Ustick Road. However, city staff and ACHD are supportive of a temporary access to Ustick Road until such time as the property to the west develops with an access to Ustick that aligns with North Blairmore Way. The comprehensive plan, future land use map designation for the property is mixed-use community. So the applicant requests preliminary plat approval consisting of 12 commercial lots on approximately 9 acres of land in the CC zoning district. There are no minimum setbacks, lot size, or street frontage requirements for lots in that zone. The maximum building height allowed in the CC zone is 50 feet. Future buildings proposed on the subject lots shall meet the minimum dimensional standards listed in UDC 11-2B-3. In the development agreement that was signed in 2008, the applicant was granted direct access to Ustick, as I said. Due to policy changes at ACHD, the city code changes, direct access to Ustick is no longer desired by both parties. In working with the applicant, city staff and ACHD are supportive of an interim or temporary access to Ustick Road until such time as the property to the west is developed, as I said. To ensure that interim access is terminated in the future, staff recommends that the applicant submit a revised concept plan with the concurrent development agreement modification application prior to adoption of the findings by City Council that provides details on how the site will be designed after the removal of the temporary access to Ustick Road. The preliminary plat shows 2 shared driveways into the development. There's an existing north-south public stub street to this property at the north property line, which is Buckstone Avenue. This street is located approximately 330 feet west of Venable. The applicant is proposing to provide access to the site through the extension of Buckstone with an access easement/driveway. The proposed shared driveway will run from the existing stub of Buckstone Avenue to the north to the temporary access to Ustick Road on the south boundary of the site. The applicant shall work with the ACHD on the design of the turnaround entering the subject property. The proposed east-west private driveway aligns with the existing commercial development to the east and should stub to the western boundary of the site for future connectivity via Cooper Avenue/Lane, which would be the road that would be constructed that would then require the temporary access to Ustick to be removed. The cross-access will be reciprocated when the property to the west develops. So on the revised preliminary plat, there is a note that states that the proposed access to Ustick is temporary. The draft staff report from ACHD also requires the applicant to enter into a development agreement with ACHD for the temporary access to Ustick Road and to provide for financial surety for the closure of the driveway. To buffer the existing and proposed residential land uses to the north and west from future commercial uses on the site, a minimum 25-foot wide landscape buffer should be installed, according to our UDC. Submitted landscape plan indicates a 25-foot wide landscape buffer adjacent to the residential subdivision to the north and a 20-foot buffer along the western property boundary. The applicant is to provide an additional 5 feet of landscaping, 25 feet in total, to the west property and construct materials in accordance with UDC 3B9 or seek a waiver from the City Council. Staff did receive a letter from the Settlers Irrigation and from the applicant in favor of the conditions. Staff is recommending approval and will stand for any questions that Mayor or Council may have.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions from council?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
There's not yet the modified concept development plan?
I apologize. I did receive that from the applicant. I think he has that with him. If not, I can definitely provide that. They're showing just a removal and a stub.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yep.
Okay.
Nothing too extravagant there. Just eliminating that access.
Okay, anything else before the applicant stops pacing? I'm glad he's anxious to get this over too. Please come on up and state your name and address.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Lance Warnick, professional engineer with Aspen Engineers. My business address is 485 West Main, Suite B in Cuna, 83634. I think Josh has done a good job introducing the project. I'd just like to kind of hit on a few things, and I do have a paper copy of that current concept plan. So as Josh said, the developer started platting this project back in about 2007. It was finally approved in terms of the annexation preliminary plat in 2008, and the dissent expired. Earlier last year, the developer expressed a desire to try to get that plat reinstated. So we submitted essentially the same plat back through the city and ACHD to try to get the plat approved because it has to comply with the development agreement requirements. It was at that time the ACHD identified their desire to remove that permanent public roadway connection that we had 330 feet west of Venable. And in some discussions that we had with both the city and ACHD, ACHD has actually requested that we remove the public roadways on the interior of the subdivision and go with these service drives in anticipation of that public roadway being constructed over on their west. You know, that ACHD is looking at interconnectivity, as you can tell from the last presentation. And that was finalized shortly before the planning and zoning meeting. At that meeting, they approved the request just with that stipulation that we come back and essentially modify now the development agreement to now essentially remove the public roads and that permanent approach. So our goal, our next step, if assuming you guys approve it tonight, would be to then essentially have a new neighborhood meeting, say city wants us to, and ACHD wants us to remove this permanent access, and then submit the new sketches in for your consideration for a DA mod. Excuse me. But that's it, short and to the point. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to provide testimony on this item? Okay, council.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum.
I move that we close the public hearing on H 2015-0014.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing on item 10C. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Zaremba.
Discussion before we go farther, and this is a minor point. This is an application for 12 commercial lots. The depiction that we're looking at has 11 buildings on it. Am I missing one? Or am I counting wrong?
No.
Maybe a question for the applicant.
That you just closed the public hearing on.
Well, did they have it? Is this the correct?
I see 11 again on this plan as well.
Wait a minute, go back. You got 6 on this side
11.
and 5 on the other
11.
side, so you got 11.
So
Better
where's
to
the
reopen.
12th lot?
Okay, did you have a second to reopen the public hearing so we could solve this puzzle?
I'll second it.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to reopen the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And
All
I
ayes.
apologize, I should have asked this question earlier.
One lot just doesn't have a building on it.
Again, for the record, Lance Warnick, Aspen Engineers. Yeah, that concept plan that dates back to 2007, 2008 depicted 11 buildings. The the preliminary plat's always depicted 12 lots. As the updated concept plan is submitted, we don't always have to build on that every lot, but we anticipate that the number of buildings shown and would likely correspond with the number of lots being shown. Do recognize that many areas in the city can allow multiple buildings on a single parcel, and then you have certain parcels that don't have any buildings on them. So it's not an uncommon thing to have differences in the number of lots and buildings depicted. Thank you.
I think I got that.
Thank you. They got 12 lots, it'd be just 11 buildings. I understand. Yeah, they got 12 lots there.
Okay, so any further questions?
Oh, Madam Mayor, I'm
Ms. Mann?
sorry to ask you now that you went and sat down. And yeah, I'm just curious why. If you're changing everything when you have it with 12 lots. So you originally had 12 lots, you still have 12 lots, but you originally had 11 buildings, and you still have 11 buildings? Is that?
Actually, if you would see the new concept plan, it actually depicts 13 buildings. So there's the number of lots was essentially developed to create, kind of match a master plan that was being developed. Again, it's been longer than I can remember on why they don't exactly match, but my statement is that it's not uncommon for there to be differences in the number of lots and number of buildings that are shown.
Madam Mayor,
So-
follow up.
And at this point, because there is some flexibility we have in our code on the number of buildings, the reason we're here today is for the road and the access to USTIC.
Yeah, if I may, we're asking to get the plat reinstated to since expired, and that had the 12 lots. What you will see come before you in the future will be updated concept plans and requested changes to that
The DA.
development agreement that are being triggered by that removal of that public street access, 330 feet west of that Venable USTEC intersection. And that's what you will see before you. Honestly, I thought that they would happen simultaneously, but this hearing was scheduled prior to us having that ready. So we're going to be kind of bringing that back towards after the fact, though, rather than simultaneously. So.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Naren.
Maybe simply for the record, I would say the other drawing is really just illustrative. This is really all we're concerned about tonight, is the division of the property.
Not the concept.
And your modification of the development agreement will do, like Mr. Warnick said, will have your buildings, numbers, and common lots and such. So you really only have to concern yourself with this particular.
I like that one better.
And if
Where were you 5 minutes ago?
Yeah, right.
What do you ask me?
And if I may just clarify one other point, the original application had 2 common lots, which we have eliminated. Those were landscape islands that were in that public roadway. And ACHD has done 2 things. Number one, since we're now limiting the public roadway, we don't have the common lots. But 2, ACHD is trying to eliminate those little landscaped islands as separate lots anyway. They're just having them done as a license agreement. So that's why we don't have those 2 common lots.
Aha, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
I move that we close the public hearing on item 10C.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
I move that we approve preliminary plat H-2015-0014.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve item 10C. Any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes. Item 10D is a public hearing for Falcons Place subdivision H 2015-0015. Open this public hearing with staff comments.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is, as you said, Falconer's Place subdivision. It is an application for preliminary plat and the modification to an existing development agreement. The site consists of 4.69 acres of land. It's currently zoned R8 and is located on the east side of Eagle Road, south of Victory Road. The adjacent land uses and zoning: to the north, single-family residential property in the Golden Eagle Estate subdivision, which is part of Ada County. It's currently zoned RUT. To the east is single-family residential property in the Accommodations subdivision, which is currently zoned R4. To the south is single-family residential properties. One has not been platted and one is part of the Dartmoor subdivision, and both are located in unincorporated Ada County and zoned RUT. And to the west is a single-family residential subdivision known as the Sovey subdivision, which was platted earlier this year and is zoned R15. In 2005, City Council approved an annexation, preliminary plat, and conditional use permit to construct and operate an assisted living facility comprised of 5 individual facilities on the property. As part of the annexation, the developer and the city entered into a development agreement recorded under instrument number 105-152-708. In 2008, City Council approved a new preliminary plat and conditional use permit for the same use on the property. However, the developer at the time failed to submit a time extension application or record the plat and establish the use on the site within the time limits of the UDC. Currently, the recorded DA restricts the use of the property to the assisted living facility, which is why this is before you this evening. In 2013, City Council denied a new preliminary plat and development agreement modification to construct 36 condominium units in 2 buildings. Council denied the application because the changes, quote, are not improvements over the contemplated use of the subject property. City Council elected not to deviate from the specific use as an assisted living facility as approved in the conditions governing development of subject property as outlined in the existing development agreement dated September 27, 2005. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation for the property is low density residential. The summary of request: the proposed plat consists of 23 building lots and 6 common lots on, as I said, 4.69 acres of land. The R8 zoning district exists, and with the step down in density that is allowed for within the bounds of the comprehensive plan and requested by the applicant, this works for the proposed development. The gross density of the subdivision is 4.9 dwelling units per acre, and with a request to step up the density from low density residential to medium density residential, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The minimum lot size proposed is 4,004 square feet, with an average lot size of 5,717 square feet. As drawn, the 4,000 square foot lots would require attached homes. However, the city is in the process of modifying the UDC to reduce the dimensional standards in the R8 district to allow detached single-family homes on 4,000 square foot lots. The plat can be approved as submitted. However, the lot dimensions in effect at the time of final plat application will be applied. There is an existing home. As you see here, there's a lot here. There is an existing home on the site that will remain and become part of the proposed Falconer's Place subdivision. The existing home shall be connected to city utilities at the time of final plat approval. Access to this development will be provided from East Falcon Drive, an existing local street. The existing single-family residence and the proposed lot 29 Block 1 will continue to take access from that roadway, as well as the future residences on the proposed lot 4. There are several residences that will be taking access directly from Falconer's Place as opposed to the new constructed road. Development of the site is required to comply with the dimensional standards listed in the UDC and for the R8 district. Staff has reviewed the proposed plat and found it to be in compliance with the R8 dimensional standards. There are 2 common driveways proposed. The applicant is proposing lots 16 through 19 and lots 21 through 23, as you can see here. So it's these lots. This is a common drive here, and this is a common drive here that would provide access to these homes. The applicant has modified their plan to have this home take access, since our code only allows 6 homes to take access from a common driveway. So this home would need to take access from the cul-de-sac here. Per UDC, common driveway shall serve, like I said, a maximum of 6 dwelling units. The applicant will be required to revise their plat to show that. Sidewalks are required along all public streets as set forth in the UDC. In the UDC, the applicant proposes to construct 5-foot wide detached sidewalks along West Falcon Drive, including in front of the existing home, as well as along the proposed South Falconer's Place, which is the new road to be constructed. Because the plat is under 5 acres, the UDC does not require compliance with the common open space and site amenity standards set forth in UDC 11-3G. However, the applicant is proposing to construct a micropath, lot 20 block 1, which, as you can kind of see here, would then attach to the pathway that exists in the accommodation subdivision just to the east. The only required landscaping for the development is the 25-foot wide landscape buffer adjacent to South Eagle Road. The landscape plan as submitted provides the required 25-foot wide landscape buffer in accordance with the UDC. The City of Meridian requires that pressurized irrigation systems be supplied by a year-round source of water. The applicant shall be required to utilize any existing surface or well water for the primary source. If a surface or well source is not available, a single point connection to the culinary water system shall be required. An underground pressurized irrigation system is required to be installed in accordance with the UDC. The applicant is asking for a waiver from council to connect to culinary water for the landscaping. I will let the applicant discuss that a little bit further as to his needs. The requirement for the pressurized irrigation system may be waived if the property does not have water rights in an existing irrigation district. The applicant must submit a letter from the irrigation district verifying the water deficiency, and they have not done so yet. The submitted elevations depict a mix of building materials, lap siding and cedar shake siding, decorative window and door trim, decorative corbels, covered entries, and stone wainscot consistent with the surrounding developments. Staff is of the opinion that future single-family homes will complement the existing homes in the area and demonstrate high-quality materials. Because homes on lots that back up to South Eagle Road, lots 4 through 10 and 12 of Block 1, as well as to West Falcon Drive, lot 28, Block 1, will be highly visible. Going back here to the site plan. Staff recommends that the side of any structures that face the public street on these lots incorporate articulation through changes in material, color, modulation and architectural elements, horizontal and vertical to break up monotonous wall planes and roof lines. So staff is requiring that those homes go through the CCC process for design review approval. The applicant did submit a written testimony in favor of the recommendations, or of the conditions, excuse me, and staff is recommending approval of the application based on those conditions. I'll stand for any questions.
Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Mylum?
is the existing residence one of the 23?
Correct.
It is one of the, okay,
Yep.
just making sure.
It's included in the subdivision.
Included. That's a lot of land on that one.
Okay. Mr. Zaremba?
Madam Mayor, would you show the aerial view or a wider view of what's around it? Okay, thank you. Many years ago, when the property on the west side of Eagle was being developed, the original plan showed their access across from East Falcon Drive. ACHD at that time said that was too close to Victory, and then asked that developer to move their street, which is now Shaver, farther south so that it was the correct distance from Victory. And they said at that time, when the properties across the street developed, they would be required to align Falcon Drive with Shaver. They allowed it to stand the way it was because there were 4 or 5 houses on 5-acre lots, and that really wasn't that big of an impact having it too close to Victory. The last time we had a proposal on this property, I'll be honest, I voted against it because it did not include realigning Falcon to align with Shaver, as I thought ACHD was going to require, and I don't see that that problem has been fixed. Is
Correct. That was not a condition from ACHD on this specific project.
maybe I'll wait later and ask Justin. The applicant should speak first, but I'll ask Justin a question about that later then.
Okay, any further questions from council? Would the applicant like to make comment? People are starting to eat their dinner up here, which is candy.
Mrs. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Lauren Bailey with L&B Consulting. My business address is 947 Centerpoint Drive in Nampa, Idaho.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing our application tonight. I'd like to thank staff for their help on this. Just a couple things I wanted to touch on. First off, through the last process and in the meantime, we've met with the neighbors on many occasions, and especially Mr. Aldridge, who's here tonight. And we think we've come up with a plan that everybody can agree upon as far as density and amenities and those type of things. One thing I wanted to point out, and I'm a little bit confused, so maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the R8 zone that we can do 4,000 square foot lots if they use a common drive. And maybe that's something that's changed, but that was our understanding at the pre-application meeting and upon our submittal of application.
Don't believe it's specific to 4,000 square foot lots, specifically requiring them to use common driveways. But you're required to do attached product, attached single-family homes if you're doing 4,000 square foot lots under our current code. Now there's some, as I mentioned in my narrative, there is some current changes proposed to allow for detached homes on 4,000 square foot lots, but those have not been approved by council as of yet.
Possibly could have just been a misunderstanding on our part at the pre-application meeting, but I was under the impression we could do that with detached, so I apologize. We're in agreement with most of the items in the staff report. as staff pointed out, with development happening on both the east and west sides of this project, we feel it's a good time to move this forward. The sewer and water already exist. We've got a sewer line that was actually installed with the accommodation subdivision through an easement through our property. The developers worked together, and so the sewer line already runs from Eagle Road through our property to the east to the accommodation sub. And in that construction, we were able to extend a sewer service to the existing home. So that home now has a water stub and a sewer stub. They're not connected to the house yet, but those are both in place. And that was a condition of the original development agreement that home be included. I'm not sure if you're aware, but that home was actually split off through an illegal split through a recorded deed, and so it wasn't part of an actual subdivision. So this project will clear that up and create a lot there, and clean all that up, plus the city services. One other issue on this sidewalks, we did propose detached sidewalks on Falcon Drive. The accommodation subdivision actually built attached on their portion, and so really, I don't know that it matters to us one way or the other, but we probably would propose to do attached sidewalk just to match the existing in the accommodation sub to the east. On the point of irrigation, and I'm going to ask Mr. Aldridge when he gets up if he will confirm this for you, but currently this property was always the end of the line as far as the irrigation lateral went. It was the very end. And today, through the development that's gone on, the ditch no longer flows to this property. We could get water from Mr. Aldridge's property, but it's on a 10-day rotation, approximately 10 to 12 days. And the problem is we really can't install a pressure irrigation system that's going to work in any sort of fashion on a rotation of that time frame that's going to allow people to water their lawn. And so that's why we're asking if we can connect to the city services. And we have talked to the irrigation district. I don't have a letter out of them, but we have spoke to them about it. We've spoke to Mr. Freckleton at the city about the issue. And so we're working through that, but I'm confident that we can come to an agreement with staff on how to handle that when we submit our construction drawings. With that, I think the last item was just that the Falcon Drive roadway, where it's located. And I apologize, Commissioners Zaremba or Councilman Zaremba. I didn't in the first application a couple years ago. I guess I didn't realize that was such an issue. We had met with ACHD prior in the city on the location of that, and everybody felt like, as far as the staff went, that location was okay, and that Falcon Drive could stay where it was, and so that's the way we've always operated. So, you know, it's a street today. It was extended and constructed at full width at the other end, and so we just assumed, not assumed, but we had those discussions with staff, and everybody was on the same page about that staying where it was. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd?
Mr. Bailey, the existing house, do they have a well?
They do.
Is it capable of doing your pressurized
Well, my
water?
understanding under state law is that for a residential well, we can only water up to a half an acre. And so we would have far more irrigated property than that.
He's shaking his head, that's right, so.
Okay, other questions?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Zaremba?
On the delivery of water, was there water delivered to this property before? And where I'm going for is if a recent subdivision cut you off from something that you historically had, that's their fault and they need to fix that.
I don't think it's a recent development. And again, Mr. Aldridge has a lot more history here, but I think this field set fallow for many years because of the issue that water really didn't get to the end of the row, so to speak. It's at the end, it's kind of a high point, it just doesn't, it's really hard to get it there.
Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing further, thank you.
Madam
Thank you.
Mayor, do have,
Oh.
excuse me.
Mr. Byrd.
What size houses are you gonna build on these 4,000 size lots?
I
Have
believe
any
they're
idea?
12, yeah, they're 1,400 square foot.
1,400 on the 4,000, okay. So we're not gonna, and by the time you get driveway and stuff, we're not talking about a lot of grass area, a lot of water area.
True, these lots are fairly deep, so that most of them have a nice backyard. But the front of the home, you're right, there's not a lot of lawn area up front, but most of them, the lots are somewhat deep, and so we get some nice backyards. And I don't know if you can show the landscape plan if you have that, but it kind of shows some of the building footprints. That might help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Aldrich. You signed up, but you didn't indicate for or against or neutral.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, Bob Aldridge, 3300 East Falcon. West is a common thing that every pizza driver in the United States gets wrong, and so they come up my driveway when they're supposed to be over in Tuscany and what now is West Falcon, totally unattached. To respond, as you know, I have stood before this council many times saying I wish it was 1983 and I was surrounded by nothing but cornfields and dairy herds. Not going to happen. And so I guess I'm always mixed emotions about these things. Nonetheless, we have worked with the developer. The first plan of triplexes just wasn't acceptable, and the council, I think, properly turned that down, and we've met with them, discussed this. Not my dream, but certainly something vastly better than what we had before. In terms of the water situation, if you can go back to the more extended view, so I don't have a clue how to do that here. Originally, what we had was a water user situation with, let's see, right here in that area was a pump, and whoa,
It's been giving us issues this evening.
I'm assuming I shouldn't touch this. Yeah. So the lateral came around and came through, down through the subdivision and back over well to the east side. At that time, there were approximately 6 of us on that system, and we rotated around. That was all gated irrigation, which now is gone. I'm the sole user on that and have been for decades. The property on the corner, which is coming before you and has been coming before you, is going commercial. And the property here was owned by the Nelsons. They went through some family situations ending in divorces, and that hasn't had irrigation actually physically there for at least 15, 20 years, perhaps more than that. The problem is that I am in the midst of installing a new pressurized irrigation pump and converting my property to pressurized. Last year, for example, when I was still on flow, I got water every alternate week for 48 hours straight. You have to get it in 24-hour increments, et cetera. That's the problem with moving over from what was originally essentially farm type of irrigation into these other situations. The Carmel subdivision, which is the one that now sits over what used to be a number of the other land users that had water access, has a large pond. And so they can deal with that by pumping in on the days that they get, building up that pond, and then pumping out of that with a separate pump. That's simply not available here. In addition to that, there's no longer any physical access through. There used to be some underground pipe that went under the highway. That's been not used for approximately 20 years. And last time I looked, it was destroyed at all ends. As they put ditches on my property, they managed to mangle it pretty good. So I don't know how you even get water there. In addition, if that's coming out of my pump, that's coming at 220 gallons per minute at 60 PSI plus, and coming every 2 weeks. So it's just an unworkable situation on the water to attempt to get pressurized irrigation. So I hope that helps with that situation. And yes, you cannot use domestic water. I went through all of that in the Snake river adjudication, and that's purely domestic. You can't use it for other purposes. So, is this my dream? No, but is it vastly better and something that will get this property moving and get some improvements in? Yes. I was the one actually that talked to ACHD into moving that south, because they had approved with that intersection being there. And I saw huge problems because it was so close, and we met and were able to work out moving that down to what now is that other driveway down at the hump. It's still a major problem. Justin is here, but he's only the messenger. I won't turn around and shake my finger at him, but we do have a major, major problem from that intersection south on Eagle Road that I don't know when it's going to get solved, how it's going to get solved. But I don't know whether realignment would or wouldn't help on that situation. They're going to have to get that road some way. Trying to turn in right now, coming south on Eagle Road, I just don't do it. It's an accident waiting to happen. So my light is on, so I will cease.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Aldridge?
I have none.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, yeah, I'm not fast enough. Bob, I just, on the subject that I raised, and you just made a comment of your opinion, but am I remembering correctly? You've been very faithful about attending all the meetings about things around you. Am I remembering correctly that ACHD at one time said that it would have to realign?
Yes, at the time we did that agreement to move it south. That was part of the agreement, that we would eventually move Falcon Drive south to align with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Which essentially would make that weird unless Mr. Aldridge's property redevelops. So I think that's been the thing that doesn't make it practical. Not wanting to redevelop your property either, Bob, but anyway. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to provide testimony on this item? Council, any further information needed from staff or the applicant?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Zaremba.
I would ask Justin Lucas to weigh in on this one, and as I say, my recollection is that ACHD was comfortable with leaving the way it was when there were only 4 or 5 residences taking access to it, but we're overloading that. What's the current opinion?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Councilman Zaremba, it's a good question, and there's been various applications that have come through in this area and specifically on this property, and it's very likely, I can't speak to it directly, but at one point there may have been a desire or a thought to realign Falcon Drive. I guess all I can say is at this point, based on the technical analysis performed by ACHD staff, we feel that it's not necessary to require the realignment of this roadway with this application. It would create quite a burden on this specific piece of property to do that and leave some remnant potential property that would be difficult to develop and provide kind of a good design. So there's various issues with that. Typically, roadways are realigned through larger developments where all of the property owners surrounding that roadway are participating in the development. And I can think of various times where that has happened. I don't know if that answers to satisfaction, but I can say that ACHD staff has analyzed this and feels, at least at this moment, that this is a safe solution for the area.
Thank you. Exactly what I would have said. Okay. Would the applicant like to have any final remark?
Mayor, Councilman, again, Laren Bailey. The only comment I would make, and I understand where Councilman Zaremba is coming from. The only comment I'd make is that the assisted living application that was approved, they didn't require them to move the roadway. We've kind of tried to follow what they had done as far as landscaping along Eagle and some of those things, and I don't know, that's why we went the direction we've gone, and would like to continue that way, but if there's any other questions, I'd stand for those.
Thank you. Council, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further, council, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
move we close the public hearings on H 2015-0015, preliminary plat and a modification of recorded development agreement.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to close public hearing on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Zaremba.
I move we approve H 2015-0015, a preliminary plat and a modification to the recorded development agreement for Summit Equity with all staff and applicant comments.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 10D 1 and 2. Any discussion from council? Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Council, any topics for future meeting agendas?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I don't have a topic, but I do have a couple of words if you to permit me to say. David, we're going to miss you. I'm going to miss you big time. Thank you for all the service you've done, and you've certainly been a great councilman and done a great job for us. And I think I'm speaking for everybody that has served with you. You've done a very good job. Ty and Genesis, I'm glad you guys were elected. You'll do a great job. You're young. I'm very happy that this one got reelected. But anyway, thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you, David, very much for what you've done.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Zaremba.
thank you for the comment. I would add a future meeting topic, and that's the election of council officers.
Next week.
I assume you're doing that next week, but I didn't see it on.
Wanted to let Ann be here.
Hmm?
I thought it'd be fair to have Ann here.
Sure. Makes sense. Future subject.
Well, Mr. Zaremba, I would echo Mr. Byrd's comments. You're an incredible asset to the city council. You proved that again this evening with the knowledge that you have on past actions and developments, and that will be missed. It's hard to replace. So
I appreciate that.
we will give you a couple months rest, and then I'll be knocking on your door.
I'll look forward to that. That's fine.
Good deal. And welcome to Ty. You're awfully quiet this evening.
Just wait.
We welcome you on board and look forward to your contributions.
While I was sitting here being quiet, I don't know who it was that said it. For some reason, I'm thinking Lincoln. But what kept coming to mind, it's better to remain silent and thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt.
Oh, no, I do that.
It was Genesis.
Yeah, Keith and I do that. I'm just kidding.
You're true. That's true.
See?
I got 18 years.
That was my motive tonight.
Well, welcome. It's nice having you. So, council, with that, I would...
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Zaremba.
Well, I would just like to add that I'm pleased that you and Genesis got reelected. I'm happy to have Ty here. I have heard him talk about a few things, and I think he'll be a good addition. I'm very pleased that Ann Little Roberts will be my replacement, and I understand a prior commitment why she couldn't be here this week, but I think she will be good and enthusiastic addition. But I would like to say to Madam Mayor and to all of my council compatriots and to all of the department heads that I've had the opportunity to work with, and Many of the employees, I've got to know almost all of them at one time or another. And Dean Willis, who really is a part of the family. This has been a phenomenal group to work with, and I have been very honored and benefited and blessed by working with all the people that I've worked with. The city has employees that are wonderful people, intelligent, caring, giving people. And if I had the opportunity to speak to each of the employees, I would say that whatever heights I've attained, you all have been the wind under my wings. And it's been through your efforts that I've been able to act like I was intelligent about things, because I've been prepared by all of you. And I just think the city is in good shape with a phenomenal staff. And I just want to thank everybody for their kindness and their guidance and their support of me all these years. It's been a great experience. So with that, Madam Mayor, I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All ayes.